More on this, I want to bring in Maura Gillespie and Jonathan Kott. Maura is a Republican strategist and founder of Blue Stack Strategies, and she's also the former advisor to House Speaker John Boehner. And Jonathan is a Democratic strategist and former communications director for West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Great to have you guys here. Maura, I'm going to start with you. Can you break this all down for us? Why is today's event in Iowa so important? And could it sort of, because the evangelical vote is important, and do you think this will sort of force candidates to publicly state their stance on abortion?
GOP candidates have long struggled to say how they really feel about abortion. And today's 6-week abortion ban from Iowa is going to play into the voters' minds as they get into the ballot box. For me, I've been a conservative because I believe in the core principles of a smaller, more accountable government. And there's nothing more contradictory than the abortion stance that many in the GOP have by saying that nothing says more like big government than we're going to tell half the population what they should do with their body. So I've always said that abortion should not come down to whether it's right or wrong. The question on abortion comes down to, should the federal government have a say? And for somebody like me who believes in a smaller government, the unequivocal answer is no. So I think this is going to be a problem for Republicans.
All right, Jonathan. So I want to ask you sort of a follow-up question to that. As more and more Republicans are sort of feel pressure to endorse these abortion bans that are popping up, is this going to actually help Democrats?
I think it will help Democrats politically. I think it's an awful situation that people in this country are being put in. What we're having now is politicians ignoring science, ignoring doctors, and just deciding how hateful and hurtful they can be to women in denying them access to health care. It's somewhat ridiculous that many in the GOP have decided they'd rather have Kim Reynolds, Tommy Tuberville, and Tucker Carlson in the doctor's office when women are giving birth or talking to their doctors than just having doctors and scientists in there making these decisions. Also, the idea that Tucker Carlson is moderating this panel just tells me everything I need to know about the hypocrisy. This is a guy who is just spoken to a man was arrested on sex trafficking and rape. So these evangelicals can take a back seat when they want to talk about faith and God and all of the piousness that they want to when they invite somebody like him in to talk to this group of people. So yeah, it's going to be helpful politically because this is just a ridiculous and absurd event that they're doing and an even more hateful piece of legislation she's signing. But I hate to look at it in the political lens because there's going to be women who die from this. There's going to be women whose lives suffer. And if the evangelical community cares so much, where's the bill to help women carry the pregnancy? Where's the bill to help women with adoption, foster care, prenatal, postnatal care? Where's the bill to help all of those babies that are born to women who can't afford to take care of them? I don't see any of those bills. All I see is them saying, do what we want because we think it's right and we know better, and then nothing else. Then you're on your own. Find some bootstraps to pull yourself up on and hope that a millionaire who gets a tax cut can trickle down some coins to you to feed your child. I just think it's ridiculous.
All right. Well, Maura and Jonathan, I want to ask you about something else. President Biden just returned from Helsinki. The last time a U.S. president made that trip, you may recall, former President Trump stood next to Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he praised him while condemning, the U.S. intelligence and condemning the U.S. for allowing the relationship to fray with Russia. 5 years later, completely different picture. President Biden spent a great deal of time condemning Russia during that visit and the war in Ukraine. Maura, I want to ask you, how is this expected to play with Republican voters?
Republican voters are going to have a hard time, I think, finding fault here as far as how he presented himself overseas. I've always believed, and both of my previous bosses believed, politics stops at the water's edge, and we should rally around what our president of our country is doing. And in this case, standing up against Vladimir Putin is the right course of action and incredibly important for our diplomatic relations with our allies, but as also our standing on the world stage. This is an important moment and return to some dignified leadership, in this regards, I would say.
So, Jonathan, President Biden hasn't had sort of the best approval ratings lately, but this was a pretty good week for him overseas. Can he capitalize on this looking forward in terms of the campaign, or are voters really more interested in domestic issues?
I think voters are definitely interested in domestic issues, pocketbook issues, what affects them on a daily basis. But yes, President Biden had a great week last week. Went over, he's unifying the world. He's doing what a president needs to do. He's not, insulting his own intelligence community. He's not siding with a murderous dictator. But he's also, inflation is going down. Lots of jobs are being created. Great employment numbers, great inflation numbers. So he had a great week, and I hope he comes home and continues to capitalize on it. But I do think, at some point, voters will look at the contrast, and it's Joe Biden who's adding people to NATO, who's rallying the world against Putin, versus Donald Trump, who just said, yeah, I believe Putin, despite every piece of evidence that everybody in my administration told me.
All right, Maura Gillespie and Jonathan Kott, thank you so much.